explaining to Gia and Teresa that John Fuda would never bring up Gia's name. Oh my God, why are you discussing John Fuda? You're obsessed with me. Why are you bringing that up? What the
Hello and welcome to the Bravo Outsider Podcast, and happy holidays to all of our listeners in the US and Canada. We were off last week celebrating the holiday, but we're back. And since there was no Real Housewives of New Jersey that aired over the holiday weekend, we're going to cover last week's since we were off. So it works out perfect. Joined as always by Dylan Ferguson, and we are very excited to be joined by the host of the You're Literally On podcast, Dacey O'Kelley.
I may design games, but I don't always play by the rules.
Oh, nice. That's great. Well, we've got a lot to get into for Real Housewives of New Jersey and Real Housewives of Dubai this week. So let's roll into it. I think we should start with Real Housewives of New Jersey. Dacey, do you want to give us a 3-sentence summary of what happened?
Okay, so I'm not like a Jersey girl, so I've only watched like the first and I think second seasons. So my 3-sentence summary for the episode that I watched this season would be: Danielle and Jennifer get in a fight and the fallout is resolved. Lines are drawn in the sand and teams are picked. And
Oh,
and
awesome.
Bougie Kids is dropped.
Yeah.
Again.
Again. We got a rebrand.
Still haven't fixed the way they spell bougie, but have
they
changed
haven't
the
fixed
logo,
that.
I guess.
They've chose the worst possible font for it.
Oh my God, yes. I was sitting there I was like, what is this? Like, it's a rebrand. You should rebrand your name. The Bougie Kids just sounds like kind of cheap. I don't know. That's my opinion. But
Danielle said that she spent like countless nights learning how to like code off of YouTube in this episode, but didn't spend as many nights scrolling through the available fonts that she could choose or license. Just went with the default from Windows there. Love that for her. Let's dive into our artistic analysis. Dacey, was there anything that stood out to you in terms of like dominant themes or literary devices or cinematic devices or the presentation of this episode that was particularly interesting to you?
Maybe I'm just not used to like the Jersey format, but one, I did like the highlighting of the children, especially because we ended with Bougie Kids. So, but also, I don't know, I did like the presentation of like picking a side and then trying to stay in the middle. Like there was a part where Jen Kessler at the very end, she is like put in this like no-win situation and she's like trying to play it in the middle. And so I think it's kind of like foreshadowing, one, the continuing feud between Teresa and Melissa, because Melissa's just going to be anti-Teresa's side and vice versa. And so I did like that Kessler is kind of like, or Fessler. Is her name Kessler or Fessler?
Fessler, yeah.
Fessler, yeah. She was put in this like lose-lose situation.
Yeah, I think that this is like a really interesting like strategic situation that she has to navigate here, because Teresa has done a great job of like forcing this Kobayashi Maru situation on her where there's like no way to actually win this. You just have to navigate it the best you can. Dylan, was there anything that stood out to you in terms of the artistic presentation here?
I'll give a little shout out to aesthetics in this episode, which I don't usually do because Jersey isn't not normally the most like aesthetically pleasing show or the most like stunning artistic presentation. But I really did appreciate the way they presented Joe Bonino getting his news about his diagnosis being kind of not positive, concerning, I guess, that and the way that was presented with, first of all, no music, which is key, but also just lots of shots of him kind of just staring into the middle ground, lots of shots of hands, lots of handheld cameras, kind of peering around corners to give you that sense of intimacy, that sense of being in a room with people who didn't necessarily invite you into the room with them. That was as a good example of using the toolkit of documentary filmmaking to create a sense of reality that puts you in the room with the people. And I really felt for Joe in that moment. And he's a guy who I don't usually think of Joe Bonino's emotions. He's normally just kind of shuffling around in shorts and graphic tees, fixing lighting or cleaning the pool or whatever, just kind of shuffling around back there saying, yeah, sure, to whatever Marge says. Without him ever really expressing it, because he's clearly the kind of guy who does not really express his emotions, the documentary aesthetics do a good job of making us consider his emotions in that moment in a way that I thought that actually worked for me, that actually hit for me. I was really feeling for the guy there.
Yeah, totally. That's a great read. I love this scene as well. I think when you mentioned that, Joe Bonino not being someone that we as an audience typically like attach an emotional lens to, I think you're spot on there. And we've seen that be like built up just through Margaret's dynamic, and a lot of the kind of the heavy emotional relation that she has is with her ex-husband Jan. We've seen over the seasons and seasons where she has children with Jan, and there's a lot more emotions just because it's raw, because there was infidelity there, and Joe Bonino has been a lot more of a stoic personality. And you're right, they did a great job of really making this an emotional moment and kind of flipping that switch and being like, okay, I really feel for this guy. He's going through something really human. And one thing that I thought was key about how they did this was they normally will see so many scenes of housewives at home just with their husbands, doing whatever. We saw it a million times in this episode. Any given episode, we just jump into their life at home. This was actually introduced with Margaret with her friend in the kitchen, and Joe was in another room doing his own thing. And we saw Margaret's friend actually physically leave the scene, exit the scene, and then we were left alone with the couple, and it was it made it feel that much more personal and intimate, that we were seeing something that someone else. We saw someone leave the room in order to give them their space for this intimate moment. And we were left with this almost voyeuristic view of it. Like you said, peering around corners and really getting the close-ups and the staring off into middle space. Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was one other little piece that I wanted to call out while we're doing this. We've talked about tokens being a part of this Jersey season, obviously with the bottle at the party, but another key token this season has been the book, Jackie's book, and we got some resolution there. I feel like we just need to call out the fact that we got a little bit of resolution. Margaret finally got this book that she has been making a big deal over not receiving, and she got a very impersonal note attached to it. So I think Jackie was trying to resolve this and be like, okay, you don't have anything to come at me with anymore. Yeah. But obviously Margaret is gonna use whatever she can. So she's got this impersonal note, and that's probably gonna be a bigger deal than not having the book at all.
Yeah, she'll write something. If there was no note, she'd complain that there was no note. And there is a note now, she's going to complain there was a note.
Yeah. Awesome. Dacey, do you want to give us a quote that stood out to you from this episode?
Yeah, so I really loved, I don't remember who said it, but somebody was talking to Danielle at her Bougie Kids party, and they said, you said the dress code was casual. And she was like, I wear sneakers. And I really love that quote. And I also loved when she was talking about her dad potentially coming, and she was like, well, she had the bra on, and she was like, well, now my boobies are out. So.
I think she said hoo-has.
Hoo-has, that's what it was.
Yeah. It was the Danielle term for it. Yeah.
I just thought that was a funny, nice quote.
Yeah. I feel like Danielle just gives us so many great quotes whenever she's on screen. Because another one that stood out to me was, or her assistant said, if you vomited, this is probably what it would look like, referring to the party, which is normally if you said that something looks like vomit, it would not be a nice characterization of something. But here she meant it as a compliment, and I really love that.
Yeah.
Let's dive into strategy here. Dacey, what stood out to you in terms of strategy?
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you mean by strategy? I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah. So when we talk about strategy on Housewives, what we're typically talking about is like how the social game is played. So you mentioned how we saw like a lot of like changing of sides, kind of the decisions and the small pieces that really go into that, and how people kind of move their like jockey for social position within the dynamic.
All right, that's what I thought you meant, but I was like, let me just get clarity.
Yeah.
Okay, because I did have notes about this because I was like, ooh, these are interesting dynamics going on here. Okay.
Yeah.
Number one, I think that, I'm super pacifist. I'm like such a non-aggressive person and like super not violent. However, I think if you like put your hands on another person, like you can't then be upset by their response of you putting your hands on them. So I do kind of get like Teresa's point. Like I kind of agree with Teresa that like, they both kind of were in the wrong, that Jennifer Aydin did put her hands on Danielle first. And then Danielle, obviously escalated it, took it from like 0 to 60, throwing the drink on her, or she threw a glass on her or something. It didn't show it in the recap. So I was like,
this is something that I was actually wondering about, because when it happened live, I thought she smashed a glass against her head, and I was like, "Whoa, buddy, that's intense." But they're talking about it as a cup, so I was like, "Oh, is that just a plastic cup?" Because if it's a plastic cup, that's not nearly as intense. It's not as dangerous.
So we got like a little bit of a like Zapruder tape treatment of this at the beginning of this episode where they're doing the recap, but not nearly enough. And I think it was a plastic cup, and it's hard to tell from that shot. But when I was watching the previous episode to this for a second or third time or whatever, going into our last episode, I noticed that there was like a B-roll shot of a little like of a plastic like labeled cup that was like brought by, I guess, one of the caterers or whatever. So I think it was just a little plastic cup that was smashed.
Glad we got that settled.
Yeah. And I feel like when they were at Jennifer Aydin's house, she was clearly being like, oh, if somebody punched you in the head, then I would like have your back. So one, like I said earlier, I think that they were setting Fessler up for failure. Like she was in such a lose-lose situation because she was taking up for the other woman's husband. I couldn't catch her name.
Oh, yeah. John. She was sticking up for John
Fuda's wife. Yeah. And I was like, why is this woman mad? And it was kind of like a damned if she does, damned if she don't. Like, there was no way she could win because she was like taking. And also, I didn't like Melissa's quote about, well, Gia's 17. That's a child you shouldn't be talking about. It's like, yeah, Gia is 17. That is technically a child. But also, she's 17. She's old enough to like ask questions if somebody's saying that she's doing cocaine at parties. Like, she's old enough to understand that and like get clarification on a rumor about herself. So I think
I thought that Gia was actually older than that. I thought that Gia was like 21, and so the whole like she's a child thing really didn't make sense.
Yeah, I thought she was like 21 too. I thought she like.
Oh, I thought she was 17. Yeah, I was like, okay, she's technically a child, but old enough to like.
They were definitely talking about the things that John Fuda had done that he was arrested for. What happened when he was 17, and I think he said, "I was younger than your daughter is now." And I think Fessler did a really bad job of actually defending it because she starts talking about it like, oh, it's like mistakes that she made when she was a child. But he never said anything about her doing coke or anything like that. He just like picked a close at hand example of somebody being somebody she cares about who is young. I didn't think there was any comparison to like or any implication of her drug use in what John Fuda said. Like, I don't like John Fuda at all, but to me it seemed like he just said, oh, like I was younger than say your daughter, a person who you care about, whose age was similar, whatever, and I thought Jen really put her foot in it by implying that he was talking about Gia's drug use when he never mentioned that at all.
So I think like the context on this is, and I know you guys haven't watched this season, but I think like 3 seasons ago when Jackie was like a full-blown housewife, this was a big conflict between Teresa and Jackie where Jackie made like an analogy and referred to Gia doing coke in a bathroom, like as an analogy for, the rumors that Teresa was spreading about Jackie's husband, Evan, being unfaithful to her. And so I think John Fuda made reference to this, like being like, oh, I was younger than Gia was at the time when Jackie was made the analogy. And so that's how they kind of linked it back. But yeah, you're right. He was not like implying that she was doing cocaine, and Jackie wasn't really implying that either. She was trying to make an analogy that, Teresa grabbed onto and like blew up, which John Fuda should have known better. Maybe it was like intentional that he did this to try to trigger her. But I am kind of losing my faith in the fact that Rachel and John Fuda have any sort of strategy operating here whatsoever. I think that they're just like going purely on emotion, and they just don't know what's what, because Rachel's reaction at the party made like zero sense to me. If she doesn't want to give Teresa any ammo, like if she is like brought into what I think is Margaret's master plan and trying to freeze out Teresa, she's doing an absolutely terrible job of it. She's giving them like her nothing but ammunition and like talking points. And so if this is her finally being like, oh, I want to put my foot down, just don't talk about me, I think she's like, she picked the wrong moment to try to do that, and she made a big deal out of it, which is obviously going to make it a thing on camera. And I have no idea what Rachel's trying to accomplish, and I don't think she does either.
I think both Rachel and John came into the season ready to fight, but not necessarily ready to play. Like they're very blunt instrument, and we saw that when John had the chance to sit down with Teresa and Louis, and he was almost immediately like, "Nope, I'm refusing this meeting. I'm leaving, and this is going to be my terms." And Rachel does something very similar in this episode, where she's like, "Nope, I decide that this is crossing a line, and now I'm going to walk away." Like they're trying to strengthen their position by saying that they can choose when to end any conversation at any point, but the more skilled players are going to be using those opportunities rather than walking away from them.
Yeah, totally. One thing that I thought was really interesting strategically is what Jen is kind of doing here, because obviously her number one is Teresa, but Teresa has a substantially higher like position within the show than her. Like she's almost like kind of the Godfather type boss. And what Jen is doing by forcing this conflict with Danielle is really interesting because she picked Danielle, because Danielle is good with Teresa, and the fact that she's kind of like forcing a bit of pressure upwards towards Teresa, I thought was interesting. I don't know why she is doing it, but it does, like, it's just a little light amount of pressure there, just to maybe be able to create some leverage with Teresa later if she needs it, being like, well, you got to pick me or Danielle later, or you didn't really stand up for me, you went to Danielle's party, I need you to do this for me, so maybe I can use that in another situation down the line, in some larger play. So I'm curious to see what comes of this and how it evolves. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice.
That's definitely the thing that interested me most about this episode strategically, is just the question, like, what is Jen Aydin doing? Because we see Teresa is not ready to be on board with her screw Danielle, Danielle's the enemy thing that she's going with, because Jen Aydin has clearly made a choice that she's going to set about attacking Danielle. The way the previous season she made a choice that she was going to set about attacking Margaret, but it was more clear why she was attacking Margaret last season. And this season it's really that's kind of the big question for me, is like, why is Jen doing that? Because she clearly has decided, and now she's picking little elements to justify it, like, oh, you were rude to a hairdresser once, or I don't like the way you run your charities. She's clearly just finding justifications, but has made the choice that I'm going to attack Danielle. I'm going to make her my enemy. And I agree that it's very hard to understand if you just look at it from the lens of she's an adjunct for Team Teresa. Like, she's just tied with Teresa's interests. And we've often talked about Jen Aydin that way too. But I wonder if the solution is simply that, Jen Aydin is also Team Jen Aydin, and she's also playing for herself. and maybe this is a way for her to try to grab the spotlight and become a central player too, which is surely something that she wants. And you could look at it from her perspective, and she's seeing what's coming up in the events planned to be filmed. And this has been a very like Danielle focused, at least first half of this season, right? We have like Nate's recovered from brain surgery party. Then we have a lot of stuff about Bougie Kids being at New York Fashion Week. Now we have a Bougie Kids brand relaunch. You could see Jen Aydin looking at these events coming up and being like, okay, Danielle's just going to be in the spotlight. Like she's going to be the central focus. So my path to the spotlight is to become her number one enemy. And I wonder if it's just as simple as that, of just her saying that, like, if to have the most leverage and to be the central focus, I've just got to make my antagonist be the person who's already going to be in the spotlight.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like one of the things that is we saw earlier this season where Teresa said to like Jen Fessler, basically, I don't care like who you're friends with. It doesn't matter like where you go. She also said that to Jen and let Jen go to Melissa's party and was like, I don't care who you're friends with. But now in this episode, we saw, Jen say in a confessional that she's hurt by the fact that Teresa is going to the Bougie Kids lunch. Yeah. So it's there might be a more like emotional play here. Like Jen is more concerned about who's on whose side than Teresa is. Teresa will just play the field however it's laid out, and she can work with it, whereas Jen is maybe more intentional about how she plays things. She might be more threatened by the idea that Danielle is kind of straddling the line, and she is working better when she knows very clearly who's on either side. So it could be like, since I don't trust you, since you are, you're getting tighter with Rachel, you're getting tighter with Melissa and Margaret, I don't trust you anymore. So I want to make sure that you're firmly on that side of the room. And, I can better play when I know who's where. And her growing attachment to Jen Fessler to try to bring her on board might be influencing that, because she's seeing that she's making progress there, and she doesn't have the need for Danielle, especially when she sees her influence waning.
A lot of progress. Fessler is the most vociferously defending Jen Aydin's position post-scrum. And that's a great example of why you shouldn't underestimate Jen Aydin's ability to get things done, because Jen Fessler was stapled to Jen's number one enemy last season, Margaret. And we see a bit of a victory lap there when Jen Aydin calls back to that point last season where Margaret is saying of Jen Fessler, do you think she'll ever love you as much as she loves me?
Yeah.
And Jen Aydin's like, well, look what I got done. I ripped her off your side and stapled her to my side. Like she can get that stuff done.
Yeah. Brilliant callback too. I love that. Did either of you guys have anything more on strategy that you want to touch on before we get into our highlights?
No, I think
that covers it pretty thoroughly. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Let's get into our highlights. Dacey, we'll start with you. What were your highlights?
One, okay, I really liked Margaret. I didn't know that she's not a fan favorite. I really liked her. And two, I really liked.
Oh, she's a favorite. Yeah.
I think she's like. I was like, I loved her. I love her house. I like Emma Maximalist, so I really was like, want to live in her house. That was one of my highlights. And because I feel like the highlights of this episode were the strategies that you guys are talking about, especially like the Fessler callback of being like, well, now you love me more. So I feel like she's like already implanting that like little inside joke, with Fessler. Ayden is Fessler. Yeah. Those are mine too. Yeah.
Dylan, how about you?
I do like Fessler's awkwardness in this episode and how bad she face plants. And I also like how she keeps going around at the end saying, I'm not campaigning for anybody. Meanwhile, she's dressed like Nancy Reagan for some reason.
I was like, she's dressed like a campaign manager the whole time.
Exactly.
With the tight ponytail.
Yeah, and well, in the middle of this like glitter bombed like Barbie Katy Perry themed party, for some reason she's wearing like pearls in a red pantsuit or something. So that just also just makes her position that much more awkward visually in that scene too. So that was great for me.
I think that my highlights. So one thing we didn't talk about is we got Melissa's cousin's wedding. I actually really liked Joe's speech. I thought that, it seemed pretty authentic coming from him. And I don't know, I really liked it here. So want to give Joey G some props here. I thought that was pretty good.
It was pretty good, though. I do think there was maybe too much emphasis on how he was accepting rather than like on the people he was actually marrying. He was kind of like, when he came to me and told me he was gay and I accepted it right away. Like, dude, it's not really about you, actually.
Yeah. I did make a note. I was like, does he know this wedding isn't about him? And but then I was like, okay, it is like a sweet speech and I guess he's proud, but also like, it's not your wedding, my guy. Yeah. Like, this is not your stand-up set.
And aside from that, I think we covered most of my. Oh, of course, how could we forget the big to-do, Rachel's arthritis event? We're getting more of Rachel's arthritis storyline.
Craig is so sick of Rachel talking about having arthritis.
I did make a note about this because I'm a person that has a chronic illness that like is invisible. So I was like, I thought this was a really nice moment because to hear the little girls be like, I don't want to be known as the kid that's hurt all the time. And I was like, I feel like that's really relatable. So I did like that scene as a person that can relate to that 7th grade girl.
I definitely. I just think that the way that Rachel is kind of trying to play this as a storyline is, it kind of lines up with what she was doing last season with her like adopting her stepson storyline. Like there's almost this like, we see so many housewives that are like grasping for storylines and it feels a lot more organic, but the way that Rachel is handling this, specifically things like making sure that she gets a phone call in, like stepping outside to phone Dolores while she's at this event to like segue into getting coverage on this is what is I think the thing that stands out to me as being like annoying about how she's handling this. And, it's something that she's really like bringing up a whole bunch. We heard nothing about it being like part of her, part of her life until the very beginning of this season. And all of a sudden it's like, this is my thing. I'm like, I just feel like her handling of this is really inorganic.
Yeah, it is kind of giving a Viva Drescher when, like, in her final season, where it was just like, what is this? I would just fast forward through the scenes, but that is what that reminded me
of. Okay, let's get into our stars. Dacey, what are your stars?
Oh, I think Danielle was amazing. She looked good. She slayed the whole episode.
Yeah.
Danielle was my star, honestly. I liked Margaret and I liked her husband. Those are my two. I really liked them. I was the most invested in what they had going on.
Awesome. Dylan, how about you?
Let's give first star to Jen Aydin. I think she's the fact that I'm just trying to figure out what she's cooking up here is great. Like she's the most interesting player for me right now, and always fun to watch too. So let's give her a first. Why don't we give a second star to Joe Bonino? Only time that's ever going to happen. But you know what? He got some emotions coming there. He had some moments that made me really think about the guy where he's usually just kind of like one of the dogs, just something that's happening in the background. And so good to have Joe get a moment in there, and hopefully everything's okay for his results. Fingers crossed for my buddy Joe, who's now my buddy. And third star, let's give a third star to Margaret, just because she was part of that moment too, and it's nice to see that angle on her. I don't always love Margaret because she is such an intense presence, but in moments like this, we get to see kind of the anxiety, the kind of the things that she's gone through that are part of her personality and part of maybe why she is an intense person. She's had to deal with a lot of stuff and is still dealing with things, and it's good to see that angle on her as well.
Well, this shocking snub of Jen Fessler is not going to last here. She's going to be my number one star. I think that the mess that the Fessler has gotten herself into is, it's a thing of beauty, and it is, just this complex web that Teresa has weaved and like trapped her in, but how she's like navigating it and the way that she's operating, I just really love it. I love that she, kind of got into a position where she has to defend Jen Aydin at the beginning, and then has to defend her, defending Rachel to Teresa to back to Rachel. I just really love this dynamic, and Jen Fessler I think is just great television. She's great to watch. She just has a way about her. She's my number one star. You guys touched on the other. I think Danielle definitely deserves a star here, and Jen Aydin would be my other star, even though we don't really see a lot of Jen Fessler on screen, like in terms of raw screen time. But the impact that she has is far reaching, and it's raising interesting questions. And so for her to make as that much of an impact with that little screen time, I thought, she definitely deserves a star there.
Also, I find it really entertaining how one of the subplots for me is that we have these two women who were like standing on the sidelines when all the shit was going down in the previous season, and Jen Fessler and Jackie. And this season, they both like jump into the middle of the ring and both immediately faceplant. It's been really funny for me.
Awesome. Well, we're going to talk about Real Housewives of Dubai right away. But if you're enjoying our discussion, please be sure to like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Find us on your favorite podcast platform of choice. Subscribe and review there. It helps us out a ton. Leave a comment. We try to respond to all the comments on our YouTube channel. So, hit us up. We'll write back. I promise. Awesome. So let's jump right into Dubai. I think that we're actually a week behind on Dubai just because of the holiday, but we're going to talk about the 4th episode of season 2 of Real Housewives of Dubai. Dacey, do you want to give us a quick summary of what happened in this episode?
Yes. Women build each other up just to go to dinner and call each other a bitch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm like one of the 5 people that genuinely enjoy Real Housewives of Dubai. Like, I'm a Dubai fan. There are dozens of us out there, so
I am I'm warming up to it. It's been a little bit slow to grab me, but I am warming up to it. And that's mostly because, I think Chanel Ayden is a great housewife. She would be an absolute, all-star if she was on one of the more marquee franchises. And, I think that she's fantastic.
Yeah, Chanel Ayden, you will always be famous. She's really well.
Let's talk about the artistic presentation here. Dacey, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, because I do have notes about this one. So the episode starts with Talene talking about her workout business and how she's doing it to empower women, because there's still a lot of women in Dubai that don't want to go to the gyms with men. And then we cut to Ayden talking about empowering things that she does for women. She goes and gets her teeth inspected and talks about her mother and stuff like that. And then we have oh my gosh, we have the mothers in this episode. So there was this huge focus on girl boss, feminism. And then we get to the dinner and there are these amazing shots. First of all, Dubai, 10 out of 10. No misses on that cast. You get these really powerful slow-mo shots of them walking into the hotel with the flames coming up, and some of them are wearing crowns. Mm-hmm. They're just decked out. They look great. They look really powerful. And then, they get to the dinner, and they immediately are like praising each other, and then it's like one tiny thing and the whole thing just unravels. And I was like, this is such a good like build up to this dinner where you like see how fractured the friendships actually are, because we got a lot of makeups this episode. Yeah,
that's a good read. And this dinner, I thought that it was like visually interesting. I love that the use of like opposite elements like fire and water like brought together behind, you know, the table in this big like fountain with flames. I really like, it was nice to look at. I feel like the polar opposite representing like the division between the two housewives and how it was like kind of together and kind of separate. I liked it a lot. There was a lot to feast the eyes on. Dylan, what stood out to you in terms of the presentation here?
I did like the setting for the dinner at the end too. I do like the jets of water being blown everywhere as well, like underscoring the drama. And also it kind of reminds me of like that thing in Dune where like they show their wealth by having plants that take a lot of water when they're in the middle of the desert. It kind of feels like that, you know, they're in the middle of the desert and there's like, look how much water we can waste to show how wealthy we are. I do think it's a great choice of location for Ayden to make. I also feel like you, Craig, maybe even more so that like, thank God she's on the show, because otherwise I don't know why I would be watching it. But I do think that she's probably a good fit for the show too, though. Like you said, she could really kill on another show, probably. But there's something that makes her appreciate the setting a little bit more for me when I normally wouldn't really appreciate that much, because there's something about her which is kind of like the city, and that she's kind of like this cipher which has like an impeccable facade, kind of an intimidating facade. You know, her aesthetics are always very impressive and very big, but you don't really, she's kind of mysterious beyond that. She's kind of Sphinx-like. You know, we don't even know how old she is. We don't, what is her inner life like? I have no idea. How many teeth does she have? It's just, there's like all this mystery behind this kind of intimidating facade, and that combined with her being just an extremely entertaining, delightful presence on camera, makes me like the show more. And I love the way that she shows up first for her dinner and just like talks incessantly with the guy showing her to the table, and then does an impromptu photo shoot because she's there before everybody else. Like it's all like classic Chanel shit. She's and it's just great that she is at the same time being like, this is the queen party and we're here to, you know, build each other up and tell each other how great we are. And I pick this spot to make you feel all jealous about my seats at Beyonce. That's great. The double-edged sword of that is just very on brand and just like very well done. Also, I don't like the whole like the aesthetic is queen is something that I don't like really understand in the real world, because it's like what does an actual queen look like? Like just some decrepit old parasite? Like what's an actual? I feel like you could come up with a better term than queen to indicate like powerful woman. You know, that's just me.
I mean, Catherine the Great overtook Russia in a bloodless coup. So I mean.
Yeah, sure. But that was a long time ago.
Okay, true.
I thought that this idea of a queen kind of ties into something else that was just a little subtle comment from Talim, where she says, "Oh, you can't get like chefs and servants like this in America. I love the luxury of Dubai."
Right.
And it's like just like basking in this like economic disparity between you know the like elites in Dubai and like the people that are actually like making everything happen.
Totally. That stood out for me too. It's like, yeah, you can hire those people in America. You just have to pay them a fair wage.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was literally my first thought. Was like, we have that here. Like, what?
Yeah, I thought another theme and something else that added an element of interest to this episode for me was the dynamic between Sergio and Caroline here.
Right, that's still happening.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't stand Sergio. He's great TV here, but yeah, it's just this argument that they are having where he is just so fragile in his like masculinity and being like, no, you come to me first. I'm your husband. I'm the man of the house. You prioritize me, is just like, it is so toxic. And him just, yeah, he's awful.
Yeah, I made a note about that because literally the episode before this one is Stanberry doing her like hypnotherapy, and she tells him point blank, like, you need to like think and act for yourself. Like, I can't micromanage you all the time. And he's like, no, like, I like it. And then this episode, he's like screaming at her that no, he's the man of the house and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, just 10 seconds ago, like, you couldn't like put up handbags by yourself. Like, what do you want from her? Like, these are mixed messages. So I just thought that was like, I wrote pick a lane, Sergio, in my notes. Like, do you want her to micromanage you, or do you want to be the man of the house? Like, which one do you want to do?
Yeah, there's all sorts of questions about how like labor is divided in this relationship that are kind of unanswered to me. Like, I don't know what Sergio actually brings to the table, because he can't like
he's young and hot, Craig. Like, what do you
yeah,
I mean, I think it's kind of obvious what he brings to the table. I don't know. Yeah. He's less than half her age.
I think that he really does like worship the ground she walks on, and I think that Stanberry enjoys that aspect, because I don't think she didn't watch. Well, she was on Ladies of London, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't watch that, but I got the sense from the clips we got from this episode that her ex-husband wasn't very like present in her life, and Sergio's up her beehole constantly. And I think that's what he brings to the table, is like, he's obsessed with her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought that this like his inability to see that she's like working and just like pestering her with questions was really interesting, because it does bring up like something that I think is, you know, a lot of couples will have arguments over the division of labor, and for him to just be completely blind to everything that she's like juggling right in front of him, and just prioritizing his own questions over, you know, what she's trying to deal with. I thought that was like a really interesting dynamic to see on screen. It was very real. I don't get a sense that any of this is like produced by either of them. And this situation that they have been living in like Carolyn's friend's house, and like Sergio having to be confronted by someone, and every like thing that he does is like perceived as a slight towards his identity as a man, I think is really interesting. Like, everything seems to be like something that he is taking personally, like just like harmless jokes, or maybe not harmless jokes, but just like barbs from Carolyn's kids are like cutting him so deeply that he's like going and venting to the guys about it on camera, and, you know, talking to Talim, who Carolyn points out, like, they don't know her. They just met her. Why are you talking about this? Yeah, I just thought that was such an interesting dynamic. He's such a liability for Carolyn. I feel like his shelf life is rapidly coming to an end here. And I think that there was an interesting callback to this idea of like the division of labor or responsibility when we hear Carolyn Brooks talking about how, you know, friendship is 50-50 and like, you know, needs to go both ways. And so to see that, you know, that Carolyn Stanberry is having to overcompensate in one area and is, you know, maybe neglecting a friendship in another area as compensation. I think that is interesting. I'm curious to see how that evolves, whether there is like, if this is actually an honest, like, dropping the ball from Carolyn Stanberry, or if it is, you know, a more strategic move that I think like Carolyn Stanberry is definitely capable. That's TBD, but it's something that I'm interested in watching.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what you said, I also think the Sergio and Caroline thing, like, it really highlighted their imbalance of power, because like she holds the purse strings, like she is the reason he can live in Dubai, like she's the reason they have this house, like it's all in her name. And I think that there is this power struggle between the two of them that I think is like a really interesting dynamic that you don't see coming from like a woman's perspective. A lot of times you see it typically from like the husband's perspective. So I don't know. I really liked that.
And I personally think the imbalance of power is one of the reasons why I'm more sympathetic to Sergio than you guys are. I do think he sucks, and I do think it's shitty that he's being like, oh, I'm the husband, you have to prioritize me. That's shitty stuff to say. But I do think he's in a very vulnerable position because she has the power in the relationship. And I do think she's very cruel to him and treats him like he's not a human being. And I think that we do actually see him apologize for the way he spoke to her, which doesn't make it mean it's okay. But we never see her apologize for like being very rude to him and treating him kind of like he's her dog, I think. So I think from both ends, it's a toxic relationship.
He's worse than a dog. He's dirt. She doesn't need to apologize. He's dirt.
I do agree though that I think she does treat him like a human being until he has like a human reaction to how she's being towards him. And then she's like, what are you, this is not, no. This is like not the part you play.
Yeah. He's basically like supposed to be a statue when he's not needed. Yeah. Okay. Let's get a quote. Dacey, what stood out to you in terms of quotes here?
Yeah. Chanel Ayon's quote in her confessional. The best thing I have realized with Brooks is to be nice to her because she is like the hungry hyena. The nicer I am, the calmer she gets. And I am not like, I honestly did not go into this season because I'm not a Stanberry fan. And I was like, this season but she clocked in. And Brooks, I feel like, is kind of clocking out. I know she's got a lot on her plate, but I wasn't expecting to not like Brooks as much this season and prefer Stanberry. But yeah, I was like, oh, she's kind of right with the way Brooks has been behaving. And then I liked Lisa's reaction to Ayan being nice to her, where everyone's like, what is happening? But Ayan, she's so strategic. Like she's playing the game.
Yeah.
And like her position in the middle of that table was just like perfect for the whole scene. It's just such a great scene.
Yeah, really. Totally. I did not understand this quote. I had it written down as well because I just did not understand the hungry hyena, the nicer I am, the calmer she gets. What is like? Is that a? Is
you
that
clearly
a
have not had much experience with hyenas, Craig?
Yeah, no, I don't.
I think she's just saying like she's not gonna like attack, like she's not gonna go out of her way to be mean to her and like provoke her. She's just gonna try and like, not coddle, but like pacify her a little bit.
Oh, okay, yeah. That makes sense. Let's get into the strategy here. Dylan, we'll start with you. Anything stand out to you in terms of the strategic decisions?
I think the strategy is still kind of baffling to me on the show. I'm not really sure what anybody's going for, to be honest. I do find it odd that they do like what seems to be like a classic Housewives game of like everybody go around and say something about somebody else, but but she's just like, and say something nice and uplifting about everybody else. And I'm like, that's not how it usually works. You're supposed to say something mean and terrible. And they do get around to being mean a bit eventually, but it just, there's supposed to be a gimmick in there, but like, we're going to do a compliment sandwich where you got to say something mean between two nice things or something like that. But yeah, too much positivity is bad for drama.
Yeah. Dacey, how about you?
Yeah, Dylan, I'm gonna have to disagree with you because this episode we get Saba. So now Sarah she's got a tag team partner.
Yeah,
we've got Talene, who is supposed to be Brooks's tag team partner, but what does she do at this dinner? She goes for Stanberry, and Stanberry is like such a pivotal player within this group because you have Lisa and Ayan, and they're a duo. You have Sarah; she kind of like floats around, does whatever, but now she has Saba, and then you have Brooks, who's kind of like an island on her own. And she brings in Talene to the group. And Stanberry is also another person that's on her own, but she kind of has this like essence of you have to kiss the ring, even though you don't for her. But she thinks that. And so I think they all kind of like buy into that concept. And they see that she's getting close to Ayan. They know Ayan is the fan favorite. And I like that she pulls Stanberry away because it immediately like set all the other ladies off. And it like, you really could see like, oh, this is like loose ice we're standing on, all of these groups. And that one little thing was enough to like, chink, chink, chink. And I think Talene sees it because now she's in a position of power amongst the other women, because now she has a secret with Stanberry that's nobody else's business. And it's genuinely not anybody else's business. So Stanberry's going to back up that claim. And I just was like, that's a good move on her. I actually looked up their star signs because I thought it was so interesting, because Talene is a Libra like me. And Stanberry is a Taurus. So I liked that, like, you could actually see like kind of, I don't know, those like weird dynamics at play.
This was I think the pivotal decision that stood out to me as well. I think that you're right. This is just really savvy play by Talene. She does it. She like pulls Stanberry aside. She gives them this piece of information, this currency that they can share together. She doesn't do it publicly per se. Like, she doesn't air it out there so that it still has value shared value between the two of them. But she introduces it to the group by doing that in a public setting. She didn't call her like before. She didn't like go to lunch. She pulled her aside at a dinner, and that is what gives that even more power. And I just thought that this was like a really smart heads up thing to do here. And she probably anticipated that she would get heat for this from the group, which she does. And I think that she did a great job of, she handled it really well. Like she said, it's none of your business. Like I was, it's nothing. It's just something between us. Don't worry about it. We're good. And that just made people even more like shooken. And she also, one thing that she did that was smart was she didn't try to bring Stanberry back into this when all the wolves were coming for her. She just fended them off herself. She didn't try to rope Stanberry back in. She was just like, it's none of your business. Just like drop it. And I thought that this was really smart. It gives her a lot of currency with Stanberry, and it gives her, something to navigate the dynamic with. I agree. This was definitely a smart play. Any other pieces of strategy to talk about before we get into our highlights?
I want to, okay. So we've had the labia gate for like an episode or two now. Mm-hmm. And Talene constantly is saying that like she's over it. Like she knows that Stanberry was joking, like, and she was just having fun, like whatever. They've like squashed their beef. And so we've seen Brooks like go so hard for like the vagina gate stuff. And then all of a sudden, like somebody else picked up the mantle, and I do not remember who it was, but it wasn't Brooks. It was a completely different lady. And I was like, this is interesting. Like, we're still fighting battles for somebody else's genitals. Like, and it's a different character on the show. And I was like, that's a really interesting point. And now I'm kicking myself because I don't remember who it was. But that was interesting. Hopefully we get to hear more about, vaginas next episode.
Let's get into our highlights. Dacey, what are your highlights?
Okay, yeah, my main one is, why is Stanberry so orange at this Queen's dinner? Her makeup was like, it was bizarre to me, and she always has like a pretty good beat. So I was like, what? Like her foundation was just really throwing me off.
She's like, moving. Maybe it's like in a box that she doesn't know where her.
Yeah, she did. I don't know, but she has a glam squad. Like she has glam.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. That was the highlight. I like drew a star. I was like, what is wrong with her face? I liked the foreshadowing because we know that there's going to be a fallout between Ayden and Lisa. And I liked that like the final quote of the show was, this would never happen between like Lisa and me. I would always have her back. And you like see at the dinner, Ayden is like just backing up Lisa without even knowing like what's going on. Just like echoing her like a little parrot. And I really liked the setup of that. And I liked Ayden's teeth stuff. I like that she thinks her body is 60.
Typical 60-year-old.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, okay. But yeah, those are my big three.
Awesome. How about you, Dylan?
Just quickly, I'll say that even though I'm not a huge fan of Carolyn Stanbury, when she was talking about like Chanel Ayan's like procedure, she was kind of on fire. She was she had some great lines about being like, oh, that's why she's so skinny, because half the food is falling out the side of her mouth, and like I never noticed she's missing teeth because she never smiles when she's around me. So she had some good lines in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think like Carolyn Stanbury appreciates when people can take a ribbing that she's wanting to give out. Like we saw, Talim has made such good ground with Carolyn Stanbury because she was able to be like, I realize you were like joking and I'm not like going to make a big deal out of it. And now she's tight with Stanbury. And I think that the fact that, Chanel Ayan is able to handle this season is helping solidify their relationship a bit. So yeah, I like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Any other highlights?
I don't think so.
Okay. I didn't give mine actually. I was happy to see Saba again. I really liked the scene where they got Karak. Is it? I think. We got a confessional, a pretty good confessional look from her. And the fact that she's getting a confessional means that she's going to come into play here. So I'm pretty excited about what she is going to bring to the table. We got the I need crack in the morning, I need crack in the afternoon song in this, which was really good. So I like that a lot. There was another scene with Carolyn Brooks. We're seeing her kind of retreat into her family this season, I feel like. And not really involve herself too much aside from just getting into it with Stanbury. But there was a scene where Carolyn Brooks is kind of grappling with her kid becoming like a tween and starting to create some distance here. And it was just something that like resonated with me, and it just like kind of tapped into my own like I worry about this happening with my kids and when they're going to eventually start creating distance. My eldest is 5 right now, so it's like a few years off, but just seeing her kind of see this evolution of this dynamic between her and her child is, it tugged on the heartstrings quite a bit. So that was a highlight. I think that's about all the highlights that I had. Let's get into our stars here. Dacey, who are your stars?
Number 1 would be Talim's vagina, because it has caused so much like friction amongst this group, and for what? And it's like, I really hated like Pantygate from Beverly Hills, but this one I'm like, I just really love it because Talim is openly being like, I am over this, and all the other women are like fighting, and I'm like, this is the true star of this show. Like, my other star is Brooks's mom. I really, really loved their phone call. Honestly, all the moms. I think Sylvia's, Talim's, and then we saw Lisa's mom as well. And I just thought it was this like really beautiful, I don't know, it was really nice. And I really liked that Brooks's mom was like, he hates you now, but don't worry, you guys will be best friends in a few years. It made me miss my mom. So I was like, yeah, when I was like 10, I probably wasn't super nice to my mom. But yeah. And then I really liked Talim this episode. She's and Saba. I'm obsessed with her. I just love them both.
Yeah.
Dual stars.
Saba being introduced as the Sabotage is just like, I am waiting for her to like start a fire or something. I'm just looking forward to what she could bring to the table. I hope it wasn't this false billing because I'm really latching onto it. But really excited for her. Dylan, who are your stars?
Obviously, first star goes to Chanel Ayan. She's just the most exciting presence on screen. I'll give a second star to Carolyn Stanbury just because, like I mentioned, she had a couple good lines there. She was having fun with Chanel, and their dynamic is pretty good. Let's give a third star to that little alien figurine that we see that guy giving to Sarah, because that he knows the way to her heart.
Yeah,
it's weird alien paraphernalia. So that's like a super savvy move by him. I hope he comes on the show.
Yeah, totally. I think my number 1 star has got to be Chanel Ayan. She's just heads and shoulders above the rest. So, I love her every moment that she's on camera. And I think that I've got to give my second star to Sergio. He's dirt. He's awful. He's so annoying, but it's making me feel something. Like, it reminds me that I'm alive and engaging with art when I really feel like something so primal, this like primal annoyance with someone and just like distaste for them. It's like, you don't have to. One of the things I enjoy about reality TV is like you can engage with these characters on different levels, and Sergio is definitely giving me that right now. It's compelling, so I gotta give him some points there. He can get my number 2 star, and then third star. Let's give another one to Chanel Ayan. I just think she's giving that much. No, I'll give my third star to Lean because I think she is playing a savvy game, and I'm liking what she's bringing to the table as a first-year housewife. So I think that's pretty good. Awesome. Well, this has been a blast. Dacey, do you want to let everyone know a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, so I read and review and discuss books written by reality TV stars. We have, a few episodes about Jay Well's dating book. Like, No One is Safe. We just released an episode on Erica Jane's book. That's really fun. I basically read them and just subject my friends to them so that I can force my hobbies on everybody else in my life.
Have you got Jackie's book yet?
I haven't. I literally have like so many. I'm actually working on Rick Harrison from Pawn Star, his book, which is like the most unintentionally funny thing I've ever read. So I'm really excited for that one.
That's amazing. And people can check that out on all podcast platforms.
Yeah, I'm everywhere. You're literally on. And then on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky.
Awesome. Dylan, how about yourself?
I just want to say thanks so much, Dacey, and I'm glad that we had somebody on who was just deep reading Dubai, because it wasn't me. And I think the next time we talk Dubai, Craig should ask you to be co-host because your read on it was great. And you can find me on Substack writing about movies very occasionally. The name is Dylan Ferguson, Dylan, by the way.
Awesome. I'm Craig Midwinter. You can find me just manning some of Bravo Outsiders podcast socials. We're on Instagram at Bravo Outsider, on TikTok at Bravo Outsider. Just Google us, you'll find us. But the important thing is to leave a comment on this video if you're watching on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. Tell your friends about us. If anyone's asking for Bravo recommendations, tell them about our show. It helps us out a ton. Lets us know that we're not screaming into the void. And we appreciate all the feedback that we get. It helps make the show better. Even if you've got something negative to say, we take that to heart. We will change our identity to suit your needs.
Absolutely. We will completely overhaul the show if you say one thing is wrong with it.
Until next week, keep on wifing.